So we're doing this deep dive into Malcolm X's life. And let me tell you, this autobiography, it's a wild ride right from the start.
Oh, absolutely. The Autobiography of Malcolm X, it's not just some dry historical account. It's raw, it's personal, and it really gets into the heart of how this guy, facing all this racism and societal pressure, becomes this incredible force for change.
Right. And what gets me is, even when he's a kid, you see these hints of the man he'll become. Like, take that time he lived with that white family, the Swerlins, after his dad died. They seemed decent enough, but something about the way they treated him always felt gauze off.
Yeah, it's like a textbook case of subtle racism,
Yeah.
On the surface, everything looks hunky-dory. They're supporting him, pushing him to do well in school, but then, bam, you've got that story about the judge.
The judge who was friends with the family.
Exactly. And he's looking at young Malcolm like some prize animal. Talk about messed up. It just shows how even when things seem okay, this underlying bias can totally screw up any chance of genuine acceptance.
Ugh, yeah. It makes you think about how often people are praised for just meeting, not even exceeding expectations because of their race. And Malcolm, he sensed that even as a kid. It's crazy how aware he was even back then.
It's remarkable. And, that awareness, it really takes off when he encounters Black culture in Lansing and later in Boston.
Right. Like he enters this whole new world.
Totally. He's blown away by the zoot suits, the music, the slang, everything about it. Remember, this is a time when conformity is the name of the game, especially for Black Americans trying to make it in a segregated society. These expressions of style and culture, they were acts of defiance, man, a way of reclaiming their identity.
It's not just the clothes and the music, though, right? I mean, he starts seeing interracial couples, something almost unthinkable where he came from.
Absolutely. And that forces him to question all these rigid social norms he's internalized.
Yeah, and it makes him curious about the complexities of race and relationships.
Yeah, exactly. He's drawn to this unapologetic Blackness, right? This challenge to everything he's been told. It's the beginning of Malcolm X forging his own path, embracing an identity that doesn't need a permission slip from white society.
And that path, it eventually leads him to become Detroit Red.
Oh, yeah, Detroit Red.
He ends up right in the thick of it in Harlem, working as a waiter at Small's Paradise. It's like he dove headfirst into this whole other world surrounded by these characters, right?
And it's there that his education in racial dynamics gets real. You know what I mean? He's not just experiencing individual prejudice anymore. He's seeing the whole system at work, the lack of opportunities, the way people are pushed to the margins, forced to hustle just to survive.
And those encounters with Sammy the Pimp and Jump Steady the Burglar Man, those are something else. They're like two sides of the same coin, right? Both products of the system that tells them they're only good for certain things.
Exactly. And you can see how these encounters shape Malcolm's worldview. He's developing this incredible understanding of power dynamics, how race and class get all tangled up. But even more than that, he's learning to play the game, how to read people, how to handle himself in tough situations. It's like he's unconsciously building up the skills he'll need later as a leader.
It's wild to think that those early days hustling in Harlem, as crazy as they were, they played such a crucial role in making him the man he became.
But while Malcolm X is out there hustling, trying to find his way, his brother Reginald, he's a whole different story.
Oh yeah, Reginald. He's like the opposite of Malcolm in a lot of ways.
Right. Like, this guy's cool as a cucumber. He's not chasing after white women or getting caught up in all their risky stuff.
It really makes you think how two brothers from the same background can end up so different,
It just goes to show you how much our experiences shape us, even within the same family. Reginald's more about finding his own lane, playing by the rules, even if he doesn't love them. While Malcolm, he's starting to question the whole damn game.
And those questions, they kind of lead him down a dark path for a while, Like that whole thing with Sammy the Pimp almost shooting him after Malcolm hit Sandy's girlfriend. Talk about a wake-up call.
Oh, yeah. That incident, it shattered everything for Malcolm. All that talk about loyalty and brotherhood, out the window. He realizes that even in the underworld, trust is a fragile thing.
He starts pulling back from everyone, leaning more on Reginald, who he feels is the only one he can truly count on. But even that's not enough, Deep down, Malcolm's starting to see that the hustle, the money, the women, it's all a distraction.
He's hitting a wall, man. He's seeing the limitations of trying to operate within a system that's rigged against him. And remember, he's already got this awareness of the hypocrisy, right? How white society's morals seem to change depending on who's breaking the rules. This whole thing with Sammy just confirms it for him.
So he's basically searching for answers, for something more. And that's when his sister Hilda comes in. She introduces him to the Nation of Islam and the teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
Talk about a life-changing moment. This wasn't just some religious conversion. For Malcolm, it was a lifeline.
Yeah, like finally, something makes sense.
Exactly. Elijah Muhammad's message, it spoke directly to Malcolm's experiences, his anger, his desire for something better. Remember that part where he talks about struggling to pray at first?
Yeah, like physically resisting it.
That was Malcolm fighting his own demons, man. It was Detroit Red trying to hold on.
But Elijah Muhammad's message, it gave him a new way to see the world.
Absolutely. It wasn't about individual prejudice anymore. It was about a whole system designed to keep black people down. And that resonated with Malcolm on a whole other level.
He dove headfirst into the Nation of Islam, read everything he could, embraced their discipline, saw Elijah Muhammad as a savior almost.
Yeah, and don't get it twisted, Malcolm wasn't just blindly following. He connected with the message of black empowerment, but he brought his own experiences, his own intelligence to the table. Remember how he was nervous about public speaking at first?
He got over that real quick, though.
Right. He combined the nation's teachings with his own sharp mind, his way with words, and boom, he becomes this magnetic orator.
One of the best.
No doubt. And as he gets more attention, his platform grows. He's speaking at rallies, giving interviews, challenging the whole narrative about race in America. He becomes the voice of the Nation of Islam, reaching more and more people with his message.
And he wasn't afraid to debate anyone either. Even found common ground with some unlikely allies, like that Professor Lincoln.
Professor Lincoln, yeah. That showed that Malcolm was always searching for a deeper understanding. He was never afraid to challenge his own assumptions, to engage in real dialogue.
It's like he always wanted to learn, to evolve. But then, just as things are blowing up for him, these rumors about Elijah Muhammad start to surface.
Yeah, and they challenge everything Malcolm thought he knew about the nation, about Elijah Muhammad himself.
Talk about a crisis of faith. I mean, this is the man he saw as a mentor, a guide.
Imagine the turmoil. It throws Malcolm into this tailspin. But in a way, it forces him to confront the truth, even if it hurts.
It's kind of like sometimes you got to fall apart to really find yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And for Malcolm X, that's what happens after the Nation of Islam. He goes on this pilgrimage to Mecca, and man, talk about a serious perspective shift.
It's huge. I mean, picture this. Malcolm X, who's built his whole worldview around black separatism, gets to Mecca and boom, he's surrounded by Muslims of every color, every background, all united by their faith. It's like this powerful reminder that we're all connected, you know, that there's something bigger than these categories we put people in.
It's like that whole thing he always talked about the blue-eyed devils. That just gets shattered in Mecca.
Totally. He sees firsthand that judging a whole group of people based on their race or whatever, it just doesn't hold up. In Mecca, he finds a sense of belonging he never had before. It's pretty amazing.
And that experience, it changes everything for him. He comes back embracing Orthodox Islam, which is all about equality and unity.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. He moves away from that separatist idea and starts focusing on building coalitions. He realizes that the fight for justice, it's not just a black thing or a white thing, it's a human thing.
His whole outlook becomes global. He travels to Africa, connects with leaders and activists all over the diaspora. His message starts resonating with a much wider audience.
What's amazing to me is how open he is to growth. He's not afraid to say, hey, I was wrong, or my thinking has evolved. That kind of honesty, it makes his message even more powerful.
For sure. And when he gets back to the States, he's got this renewed sense of purpose. Starts the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which was all about uniting people of African descent worldwide. Totally different from where he started.
And get this, he even starts to see eye to eye with some of those civil rights leaders he used to clash with.
Really?
Yeah. He realizes that they've got to work together, that there's room for different approaches.
It's like he never stopped learning, never stopped growing, always challenging himself and the people around him.
Which makes his assassination all the more tragic, you know? He had so much more to give, so much more to teach us. But even now, his words and his actions, they still resonate. They still inspire people to fight for what's right.
Totally. So where does that leave us? What can we learn from Malcolm X's journey, especially today?
I think his life shows us the power of keeping an open mind, of always being willing to learn and grow. It reminds us that it's okay to change, to adjust our views when we encounter new information.
And that standing up for what you believe in, it takes guts, but it also takes collaboration. Finding common ground, working together, that's how real change happens.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And you know, as we wrap this up, it makes you wonder, what would Malcolm X be saying if he were here today? What would he be fighting for? How would his ideas have evolved even further? It's something to think about.
No doubt. Malcolm X's story, it's a story that keeps on giving, you know. There's always something new to discover, something to learn from, and that's what makes it so powerful.